Hi guys, good afternoon. So more or less syllabus is done. We are at the practice stage. So I think this is the right time to understand the examiner's report because two things that we have to mainly focus on when we're discussing the examiner's report. One is the marking scheme, and second is what to write and what not to write or how to avoid making mistakes in the exam. So that's what your entire examiner report is about. So today we'll be discussing examiner report analysis for June March 2024. I hope you've gone through the past paper because if you've gone through, understanding this report will be easier. If you haven't, I would suggest post this session, please go through the paper. It's available on the CB platform. And I will be taking up all your questions, queries at the end. So you can keep all your questions for the end. Let's start with the examiner report analysis. Before that, have you guys gone through any examiner report analysis before? Okay, so you have gone through some examiner reports. So I think some idea you're already having. Then what we'll focus more on tips which I would want to give you through this session. Uh, and before that, okay, one more thing. Have you gone through the paper June March 2024? No. Okay. Okay. So some of you have, some of you haven't. No issues. I'll try and pitch in wherever the data is required. And anyways, you can go through it post the session. So let's start. We all know what is the paper pattern of AAA. So we get two sections, section A, section B. In section A, we are given 150 marker question, and in section B, we have 225 mark question. That's a standard paper pattern that we have for AAA. And again, in this also, we know that our question one normally comes for risk. And out of these two questions, one question is asked on reporting. So, guys, if you focus on this area, reporting and risk, it is comprising of 75 marks of your paper, and you should target or strategize in such a way that you can score 50 from here only. So perfect these two areas really well. Risk has some 4 5 chapters put together: audit planning, risk, procedures, evidence, group audit, all those. Reporting has 2 chapters: completion, review, and reporting. So all these topics put together is should be your focus area, because see, the rest of the 25 marks we don't know from where it's coming. So that's again a surprise element, and normally the third question tends to get little tricky. This is the tricky part in the paper. So my recommendation: perfect this risk. If you perfect risk, you can easily score 35 from here and 15 from here. So put together, you are getting your 50 marks from here, and anything over and above that is very good. And risk and ethics. Ethics is also included here. So when you're attempting the paper, attempt your question one first, attempt your reporting question first, and then go to your third question, which is a new question in the exam. So you could follow that. Now, if I have to talk about the time management, okay, time can be managed that you spend good 1.5 hours on your section A. Okay, take enough time, read the question well, write it well. This should be your star question. It's a standard question that comes every time, and honestly, there are not lot of complications in this question. So spend good 1.5 hour on your section A. Then your section B reporting question, 45 minutes. And then your third question, you can spend 45 minutes. So this way you will be able to complete your paper. So you have to practice this question really well so that you can finish it in 1.5 hours. That's one way to manage your time. Now let's look at what the examiner has to talk about. It says section A question is typically where candidates perform best, and there have been more focused answers in recent session because it's a very standardized question. If you practice well, you will be able to answer well. So they are also saying candidates are focusing on section A question. So you can also do that. Then they are saying that whatever information is given in the question is enough. You don't require any additional information to answer the question, because if you see, every time the industry kind of changes. If you pick up your June March paper, the industry is oil, mineral industry, so they are doing oil extractions. So it's a very different one of industry. So if you get something like that, don't panic. All the information to answer the question will be available in the scenarios. Then they're saying it is important that you interact between the exhibits. So that means what? Basically, if I go back to my question, I have one, two, three, four exhibits. Probably there is some information that is available here, which is talking about some kind of risk, and there could be some risk in the background information also. So please read all your exhibits properly so that you answer your question. Now, the key to answering this is, please first read the requirement. Okay. So it says respond to the instruction in the email from the audit engagement partner. So we go to the email, and then you read your requirement properly. So you read what I need to do. I need to evaluate business risk. Okay, probably if you're writing this in a center based exam, you are given a pen and a paper, you can probably make a note. What all I need to highlight? Business risk. Then this question, if you see, is very different. They have not asked you to identify risk, they have already identified three risks, and they're asking you to explain how these things are materially misstated. So risk identification is already there. You have to only give explanation to all these three risks. So here they've already said operating license, operating segment, oil and gas extraction platform. So whatever information you get about operating license, you can start highlighting. As in when you're reading, probably there is something here in the background information which talks about how the license have to be acquired, how they need to be renewed. So you have to start, highlighting that here. Then something could be there in the notes. So that's why first read your requirement, so you know exactly what information you should be picking up from your exhibit. Another way to answer is, okay, which I personally find very easy, is, let's say I will say answer A, I will write business risk, then I'll put answer B1, where I'll say operating license. Okay, so like this, first you put down the structure. Then, as in when you're reading, okay, I am reading that the revenue for the year is so much. Let's say operating license. Uh, the company holds oil and gas extraction license for each of its platform. These range in duration from 20 to 50 years. However, the license are amortized on an average of 40 years. So this is incorrect. We know that amortization should take place over the useful life of the asset. You cannot have a generic amortization when the useful life is different for different assets. So this is one risk. So I will simply copy this, and I'll go back to my briefing notes, and under operating license I can copy this. So you are copy pasting all your points directly from the question into your answer, and then you can start elaborating. So what happens? One is you're saving time. Second, in case you're not able to explain all of it, and let's say I've explained 3 points well, and then two copy pasting points I have done, the examiner will feel that, okay, this student knows, but maybe because of time he was not able to answer. You will not get full, but some marks you can definitely get. And you don't have to do 2 and 4, 2 and 4, 2 and 4. You will not miss points. You will write enough, because when you're reading, okay, it's for 5 marks, I need to write 5 points. So 5 points are listed here. So this is my way of writing the answer in an easier way. If you're finding it comfortable, you can start doing that too. So it's important to interact between the exhibits. So they have given the same tip here, that you please read the question first and then you read your exhibits. They've explained the entire question here. Now let's see what are the problems that they have highlighted. It says, where a candidate prepared an answer tailored to the scenario and focused on the requirement, high technical and professional marks were available. So you got both technical and professional marks. wherever you have given the scenario based answer. Very vague answers which were not tailored to the scenario and therefore did not achieve high technical and professional marks. You write generic answer, you will get generic marks. Okay. Generic responses which do not build on the detailed scenario provided in the scenario will gain little credit. To go back to our example, okay, like for this, I'll give you an example what is generic and what is very specific. So, generic answer would be like an asset has to be amortized over its economic useful life. In this case, asset has been generally amortized over 40 years, therefore, there's a risk. If something like this is written, it's a generic answer. How do you make it specific? You can say the organization is amortizing all license on an average life of 40 years, which is incorrect because license have varying life from 20 to 50 years. Therefore, each license has to be individually identified and amortized accordingly. If this is not done, the amortization is incorrect, resulting into incorrect expense being accounted in my P&L and under or overstatement of my operating license in the balance sheet. Now, this is a very specific answer. In this answer, I have explained the issue. I have stated what the IFRS is saying. Plus, I have stated what is the risk. The risk is amortization expense is incorrect. My license is under or overstated. Please ensure all these points are included in your answer. That's where you will get your marks. Then, moving on. So, the first question asked us to identify business risk. Now, what are the problems with business risk? Risks that are of remote likelihood of occurring, already mitigated against, or will have insignificant impact are not considered relevant for evaluation. So, if they have highlighted, for example, oil and exploration. For example, if they've said going concern issue, it might not be very relevant in this scenario because they have not given any problem which says that oil and extraction has some kind of government problem or it's going to shut down in future. If something like that is there, then probably talking about going concern would be relevant here. So you have to look at the scenario based on the information you will have to answer. Also, it is very important that you use good professional judgment. So how professional judgment would come is basically understand the business. If something is affecting the way I'm operating, then definitely it's my business risk. Otherwise, don't try to put it here. Then they have given some examples of what the candidates have not explained really well. For example, the group is reliant on operating license from government across the world without explaining how this might manifest in a business risk. So you have just identified, you have not explained. Just identification will also not give you marks. You have to explain because we are reliant on operating license, and if we do not continue to obtain these license, we will not be able to conduct our business. That is the risk. So please write risk in simple language. If I have to talk about risk, is basically what could go wrong. You have to write what could go wrong in all your answers. If you write that, your risk point, you will get marks. So here they've said the risk arises when there's a chance that the license is no longer available. If you don't get the license, then that's a risk. That's what you have to write. Then we have to talk about significant risk of material misstatement. Now, before we look at the points, I want to explain the marking scheme here, guys. Whenever there is a risk question, first please talk about materiality. So you have to first say what is the materiality for this particular audit item, and then what is the benchmark you're choosing. We know there are six calculations: revenue based, profit based, asset based. So out of the six, which one are you choosing and why? So all of this put together will give you 3 marks in the exam. This is a very, very scoring part of the question. Please write materiality, benchmark, and get those solid 3 marks. After that, For each risk, okay, if you have said, for example, this is very specific question, but in generic question, if I say intangible asset is 15% of my revenue, or 15% of my profit before tax, therefore it is material. For just putting this statement, you'll get half a mark, just comparing this amount with the materiality amount. Then, if you are stating any IFRS, you get 1 mark for that. So, what the IFRS is saying? IFRS is saying amortize intangible asset over its economic useful life. That's what my IFRS is saying. Then, explaining the issue. So, how will you explain the issue here? So, you will say, for example, in the given scenario, operating licenses have not been amortized over its economic useful life. However, a generic value of 40 years is considered to amortize all its operating license. Then you will get half a mark to explain the effect of the risk. This results in inaccurate accounting of operating license, or understatement, overstatement of operating license, non-compliance with IFRS, not complying with my disclosure requirement. Any of these could be my risk. Stating that will give you half a mark. So if you put all these points, you can expect good 3 marks for each risk. In case there is no IFRS that I have to talk about, then I will get 2 marks for each risk. So this is your marking scheme. So based on this, you have to estimate how much to write. Now something like this, 14 marks. How do I know? How do I break it up? 3 marks for materiality, so I'm left with 11 marks. I have 3 points, 3 things to be explained here. If I am explaining three IFRSs here, okay, then probably 4 points is enough. If I'm giving reference to IFRS and I'm explaining the risk, I'm talking about materiality, 4 points are more than enough. Now, 3 things I have to write. Even if I write probably two points for each of it, I am good to go. So, probably something like that is what you can break it down. It says it was disappointing to see that some candidates obtained few marks for this requirement as they continue to rely on basic or generic explanation and fail to refer to information in the scenario. They have repetitively said this, students are not picking up the information given in the scenarios. They say specific marks were available in this requirement for calculation and application of materiality in line with the syllabus guidance. 3 technical marks are available for materiality determination. So, guys, please do not lose this marks. These are cakewalk marks. 3 marks you should be able to get here. Then it says generally materiality was not well applied. Now, also, if you look at this question, they have very specifically said that you need to use profit as your base to calculate materiality. So, please stick to that. If the question is not giving what is the base, then you could discuss it. But if they are giving you that profit was the base, use that to answer your question. So, again, read your question really, really well. So if I was reading the question and that time I read this instruction, I would have copy pasted this and put it under my materiality section immediately, so that I don't miss this out. Then says it was also disappointing to note that some candidates fail to justify a materiality threshold for audit. So why am I choosing a lower threshold or a upper threshold or a middle threshold is something you need to explain. Evaluation of the risk. Many candidates continue to provide answers where the risks are not explained well and lack depth. So, like I told you, those 3 points, if you keep in mind, materiality, IFRS, how it is affected here, and the conclusion, 4 points. What is understated, overstated, non compliance with IFRS, no disclosure. If you put all these 4 points in your answer, you will get your full marks for risk. Please keep this in mind. It says so they were talking about an operating segment. So they felt that this area was a very weaker area, probably because students did not focus on IFRS 8, which is operating segment. When we study SBR, also operating segment is a very small topic, so probably students have skipped it. Because of that, they could not answer this properly. They say here it was simple that the risk was inappropriate or incomplete disclosure because operating segment is only a disclosure based IFRS. So even if you have basic understanding of what is operating segment, you will know okay, it's a disclosure based IFRS. So simply I'll write risk is incomplete or inaccurate disclosure. Even if you would have written that, you would have got your marks. Then again, they are saying answer in relation to risk arising from oil groups, oil and gas extraction platform were generally poor, and many candidates either did not attempt this area or provided very vague and short answers. So they felt probably this was something out of the box scenario. Students did not answer. So that's why, guys, you have 1.5 hours to answer this question. Please read the question well, understand the requirement, and write it. So here they are saying, let's understand this. The majority of candidates who provided answer in relation to depreciation of these assets scored marks for highlighting the increased inherent risk due to complexity of the calculation which involved significant management judgment. So in case of oil and gas extraction asset that I have, depreciation is definitely a very high risk because I don't know what is the useful economic life. I probably have to do this assessment every year. Disappointing though, only a small minority of candidates drew on their knowledge of IAS 16 property, plant, and equipment to conclude that the depreciation method should reflect the pattern in which an asset's economic life are consumed. So here, basically, in the question, they are saying that this oil and gas extraction, they are not depreciating it over life because it's very difficult to say for how many years I will be able to do the extraction. What they have done is they have assessed, let's say for example they are saying 15 tons of oil is can be extracted. Out of 15, if I have extracted 5, that means one third of my asset has been used. So that's how they are depreciating it, which is not wrong because we have to depreciate based on the consumption of the asset, based on asset's economic benefits are consumed or the useful life. Now, because useful life is not relevant, we are using a second mechanism based on how much I'm using the asset. So, what they have done is right. So, this is not something that you should be highlighting that this is non compliance with IAS and that's why the risk. No, the risk is because there's a lot of judgment involved as to how much extraction is available and how much I've extracted. So that could result to inaccurate depreciation, but not non-compliance. So you need to read the scenario. You need to apply your logics that if I was auditing oil industry, then how would I depreciate this? So please try and put yourself in the shoes of an accountant or an auditor to evaluate this. It says many candidates just consume that because the policy was not normal straight line approach, it was incorrect. So simply don't blindly say standard says it should be SLM or WTB. It's not. No, the standard does not say that. Standard says assets, economic, life, or useful benefits. That's what they have highlighted. Then here again they are saying many candidates were unable to convert their accounting knowledge in relation to impairment of asset into appropriate audit procedures. So here they have asked you audit procedures for getting impairment of cash generating unit of extraction of oil and gas. So this they have felt not answered well. Now again the hack for procedure question is, guys, procedures you have to write your assertions. So assertions will basically help you understand what are you checking. So I am checking probably in case of impairment I am focusing more on valuation. So you could speak more around valuation. How am I valuing my asset? How am I getting the carrying amount? How am I getting the recoverable amount? How am I getting the value in use? So start thinking in line with assertions and then put your procedures. For procedures, 8 procedures, you will get 8 marks. 1 mark for each procedure. So please try and focus on your procedures. Easier way is to relate it to an assertion. I'm doing a completeness, valuation, accuracy, what check am I doing, and then elaborate it. So they're saying in case of impairment, if you have spoken about any procedure on completeness or effectiveness, then you did not score any credit because impairment is typically around valuation. So look at what assertions and then elaborate. Better answer, use the information provided in the scenario as the basis of procedure. Again, impairment can have multiple things. Like in this scenario, they have spoken that the recoverable amount is very difficult to determine because it's oil and gas extraction. There is no active market available where I can go and sell it. So the best way to do the valuation of this asset is using value in use. So again, if you have spoken about recoverable amount here, you would not get marks because it is not relevant to the scenario. So please understand the scenario and then answer. Valuation, okay, I know it is carrying amount minus recoverable amount or value in use, whichever is higher. But will I have a recoverable amount here? No. So don't speak about it. Speak about value in use. They have also spoken about how value in use was calculated. So you could have commented on how you will check the calculation of value in use, how you will check the cash flows, how you will check the discounting factor. All those factors you could have considered while writing your answer. So please use the scenario to draft your answer. Then the next question was in relation to matter arising from the email from the chairman of audit, discuss auditor's responsibility and describe the impact on audit planning. So basically, here there was an so there was some kind of bribery that took place here. So they wanted to set up their operation in a new country, and in that country, they have figured out that there was some payment done to one politician so that they could get the operating license. So it's a kind of a bribe. So now this is something that the auditor did not identify during the audit. The audit committee is coming and telling you that this has happened. So what should we do now? So you have to discuss auditor's responsibility in relation to any illegal payment. This will not be fraud. This will be non-compliance with my laws and regulations. So what is auditor's responsibility with regard to law and regulation? So bribe is illegal or it is something unlawful. So that is what you had to focus here. So again, it's for 8 marks. So four marks you can split here. 4 points of auditor's responsibility in relation to consideration of law and regulation, and 4 marks for determining if I know there is a non-compliance with the law, then how do I go about auditing it? That is what was expected. However, they've said overall it was a poor answer. Since most candidates were able to recognize this payment as a potential bribe or illegal payment, and that this was likely to constitute non compliance with law and regulation. Auditor's responsibility when non compliance is identified or suspected. So we had to talk about this. Weaker answers were able to identify the issue but not specifically relate them to the circumstances of the Magneta group. So they said issue everyone could identify, but they were not able to elaborate. It says candidates fail to consider the impact of this issue on audit planning. So whenever there's a non-compliance, you might have to go back and revisit your audit plan and perform additional audit procedures to see what is the impact. So sometimes you could have to pay additional fines, or you could have to do some additional disclosure, or sometimes this could even affect my going concern. So we had to assess all of this. So it says further evidence would be required to understand the impact, but did not give any details about what evidence or how it would be gathered. Again, a generic answer. It says further audit evidence are required, but what kind of audit evidence? You have to elaborate. Then auditor's response should be modify the audit plan. This says including an assessment of materiality of the issue as well as difficulty in detecting instances of management overriding the control. So why did my control process not catch this payment? That's also a question that you could have raised here, because then my controls are not working effectively. Now coming to my professional marks. So we know I get 10 solid professional marks for each of my for my risk question. Now out of this, you get 4 marks for communication. which is simply for using of report header, introduction, presentation, relevance of answer and clarity. So just for presenting your answer properly, you're getting 4 marks. So 4 marks is a cakewalk. 4 plus 3 of materiality. 7 marks you should be able to score no matter how difficult the question is. So this is a key takeaway from your examiner's report, how you can get at least 7 even if you don't know anything. 7 is something you should be able to expect. Then says the majority of candidates achieved maximum marks in this area. So for communication, most of the students got 4 on 4. Okay, guys, clear so far? Perfect. Okay. Now let's move on to our next question. So our next question is focusing on basically our ethical issues. So it's a very different kind of a question. Normally, you don't get these kind of questions in the exam. So here, basically, they have given us two organizations. One is a listed entity, wherein I have done the audit for 7 years, and then they're asking what I should do now. So you have to know your rules very well of ethics, which says that if it is a listed entity, I can only audit it for 7 years. So after 7 years, there has to be a rotation. So what factors I need to keep in mind to ensure there is a quality maintained in my audit and there is no ethical issue like familiarity and all of those that continue. Then the second issue is fee dependency. So they're talking about a non-listed client where I'm doing a lot of audit work and I'm fee dependent on them. So it was an ethical question. Again, it was a very simple ethical issue, but if you were able to identify, lot of scenarios given, a lot of things given in the questions, which had made the question a little difficult. But if you would have read it 2 3 times, you would be able to understand that these two are the issues and this is what I need to deal with it. Now it says candidates were not able to demonstrate the professional skills that were also examined in the question of professional skepticism and judgment, analysis, evaluation, and commercial acumen. So it says you did not get, most candidates did not get their professional marks here. Candidates are again reminded to use published questions and marking guide to aid them when planning answers and consider the number of detailed points which are needed to be made for the marks available. So please write according to your marks. So to risk for broke Colco, we had a familiarity threat. So it says identify threats and propose safeguard from the audit manager's continuation assessment. And for Suki group, we had a fee dependency. So it says client billing information for an existing non-audit client inviting pickle and co to tender for audit. So you have to identify these issues. So it says explain the ethical threat identified by the audit engagement matter. So they have already identified the threats. There were 3 threats they have identified. You have to only explain those threats. Evaluate the proposed safeguard. They have also suggested safeguard. You need to see if these safeguards are correct or no. If they are incorrect, recommend an alternative safeguard. So here, instead of giving you answers, they're asking you for your review comments. So it's a, I think, more easier question because you don't have to identify and write. You have to just say if it is right or wrong. It says many candidates fail to provide any explanation as to the impact of ethical issue on the audit. So you have been asked to explain the threat. So when you're explaining the threat, you have to say what is the issue plus what is the impact on my audit. My audit is not going to be correct. I'm not able to give a unbiased audit opinion. All those things could have been included here. Then they are saying candidates are again reminded that there are minimum knowledge marks. Now, what this means is simply writing what is there in the text will give you minimum marks. You have to explain it based on the scenario. So, please remember that's a case study based paper. It is not a copy paste paper where you copy from the text and write it. You have to explain each and every scenario well. Simply identifying the nature of the threat, and must be fully able to explain the impact of the issue. Just identifying this as a familiarity threat and how this will impact my audit report will give you marks in this scenario. Question practice is critical. Please practice a lot of questions. Practicing is the key to get you good marks for audit. Then they said they also felt there was a lack of knowledge of requirement of the listed entities. Students did not know what are the rules for listed entities and therefore they could not elaborate on the ethical issues here. Simply listed generic safeguards which were not appropriate in relation to Brook Coal, such as appoint an engagement quality reviewer or different audit engagement partner. So, why should I apply a quality reviewer? What will be the role of the quality reviewer and how will it eliminate the problem of issuing an unbiased audit opinion? Those could have been included in the safeguard, so that will give you marks. It says professional skill marks were awarded where candidates demonstrated their commercial awareness. Now, in this question, if you have good practical knowledge, you could have scored better marks and you could have got marks for commercial awareness and provided effective challenge to the suggested safeguard by the audit manager. So this question required a little out of the box thinking, a little practical knowledge based scenario answer. Next question said, evaluate the professional and ethical matters relating to fee and impact of the proposed listing, which should be considered by Pickleco prior to accepting appointment as auditor. So, in this, other than the fee, what has happened is I'm providing non-audit services, and this client has come to me to provide audit service, but currently it's an unlisted entity. So, I am okay to do it. However, they are planning to get themselves listed. If they get listed, I cannot provide both the service. So, how should I evaluate it? Should I even take up the assignment or should I not take up the assignment? That is something you had to answer here. It says many candidates provided vague and generic answer, failing to consider the full marks allocated and the detailed information which was provided. It says best answer were able to consider the ethical issue from both angles and what the firm needed to consider both currently and in future. So, like if the firm gets listed, then I will not be able to continue as an auditor or I have to go forgo of my non-audit service. Currently, I can accept, but in future, this could be a problem. So, this was something that they were expecting students to answer. So you have to think very practically, guys, that if I am a partner and if I have to take up this assignment, then I will definitely see if I will be able to continue in future. Because what will happen is I will put lot of time, energy, resource in the current year's audit. Then next year I will not be able to do it. So this time is getting wasted because the knowledge gain is of no use. Now I have to put this resource into another client. Again, they have to start from scratch. So, from a owner point of view, is this really feasible? Not just financially, we have to look at other factors, resource wise, timing wise, gaining knowledge wise, and then you have to answer your question. So, this with your question two. Now, question three was a very straightforward question wherein they have given that there's a holding company. It had one subsidiary, Laundry Co, and this subsidiary they wanted to sell. So what has happened is they are considering this subsidiary to be sold. They have started, all those conditions are mostly fulfilled. Active buyers have been located. They have priced this at an active market price. They are able to sell at the current condition. But however, the reporting is not correct. They haven't done a proper disclosure of this as discontinued operation or asset held for sale. So, how do you deal with this in your audit report? So, that was the scenario in the question. Now, let's read what are the consideration. It says, discuss the group auditor's consideration when determining which components group audit work should be performed upon. Now, if you see, this is a very generic, straightforward question. It says you do not need to use any exhibits when answering this requirement. So, it's a direct theory question of 5 marks. You will definitely get one question like this in your exam. It's a direct concept based question. These questions normally come from syllabus change or anything new that has been added on, or like a current issues. Normally that's the trend. So in the last attempt there was a revision on this standard. Okay, there was a revision in the standard of audit of group financial statements. That's why this had been asked. So now how do you take care of these theory questions? Best way is you look at the syllabus change documents. There is this document given by ACCA syllabus and study guide. So this is from September 24 to June 25. So if you will see in this syllabus, changes have been highlighted. So there are just four changes. Probably focus on these, like quality management. So they have said still they may be asked question regarding quality management. This is okay, not really very important. Then environmental, social, and sustainability. There has been some change in the order of learning gate. It says F5 becomes a new section focusing on socio-economic and sustainability issue, giving the increased emphasis in this area. So please read your social, economic, and sustainability issues really well. And then there are also some changes in your sustainability assurance. So highly likely that questions can come from these areas. So please focus on your syllabus change areas. Questions tend to come from. It says, disappointing to note that many students had failed to understand the changes set out in the revised standard or take note of information included in the technical article covered on the ACCA website. So probably this 5 mark came directly from a technical article. So if there is any revision in the standard, please go and read the technical article relevant to the standard. It will help you understand better. Then they say, unfortunately, a large number of candidates confuse the term component, that is a subsidiary of the entity or a group, within the term component auditor. So, and therefore provided an answer which was focused on determining the amount of reliance which could be placed on the other audit firm. While this might be a part of determination, many candidates were able to score minimum marks as they did not provide fully answer the requirement set. So they only focus on how do you identify if there was a component of the subsidiary of the holding company which needs to be audited, but this was going beyond that. So it's talking about what work should be performed after you have identified what all should you consider. Then the next question was, discuss the main area of audit quality which should be evaluated. Now this is okay, this is for UK and Ireland exam, not for us. I'm skipping this because I'm discussing the international version. Now the part B says, comment on the matter to be considered in relation to each of the issues identified below and explain the audit evidence you should expect to find during the review of your group audit working. Audit evidence are document resulting from my procedures. So after I've done my procedures, this is the outcome of my procedures. So what all should I have discussed? Possible classification of laundry co as asset held for sale. So here you should say uh, the issue is, should I classify my laundry co as asset held for sale? So you could talk about your IFRS 5 and say these are the conditions, this is satisfied, this is not satisfied, and this is how it should be accounted for. Same goes with my discontinued operation, and you could have explained 2 3 audit evidence for each of the scenario. If I were a student, I would have given audit evidence here and here. Probably they were same. Probably I had 6 evidence, I would have put 3 here, 3 here. So that gives a lot more data to the examiner, and he feels okay. Is I answered this for one also, for two also. Instead of putting 6 points here, splitting it into 3 3 gives a better presentation in the exam. It says candidates were generally able to discuss the criteria which were need to be satisfied for asset to be classified as held for sale set out in IFRS 5 non-current assets. Stronger answers were then also able to use the information in the scenario on how these criteria have been met. So just stating the standard is not helpful. You need to relate it to the scenario also. It says only better answer were able to discuss that Laundry Co. was the only foreign subsidiary held by the group and therefore was likely to represent a separate major geographical area. And if it was classified as held for sale, it was also likely to be a discontinued operation. Then it says many, a good number of candidates were able to score technical mark for discussing the necessary accounting treatment. So if it was going to be held for sale, you no longer depreciate it. It has to be accounted at the fair value or the carrying amount, whichever is lower. Those things should have been put here. Then it says many candidates were likely to recognize that there was a likely material misstatement in the group financial statement if Laundryco was not classified as held for sale or discontinued operation, and this impact was lack of disclosures. So this is the impact, and then that's why my audit report has to be changed. Answer in relation to evidence which could have included in the audit working papers were generally satisfactory. Weaker answer focus solely on obtaining items such as board minutes for approval for the sale, obtaining a written representation. No, so here they have said that we have located two buyers, negotiations going on. So you could talk about, communications with the buyers, communication with a valuer if there was a valuer involved, communication with, the legal people on how the sale can take place. All those things could have been included here. Now they are saying that what should be the impact on the audit report if they have not disclosed this accurately. Now remember, whenever there is an audit report question, things you need to keep in mind, okay? First and foremost, you have to say if the issue is material, because only if the issue is material I'm going to discuss it. Then you have to say if the issue is pervasive. Pervasive means affecting major areas. Now if there is a discontinued operation, it's not been disclosed correctly, then all my revenue, all my expenses, everything is wrong because I've added revenue expense of these subsidiaries in my PL. So this is a pervasive issue. Then what is the kind of audit report I'm going to be issuing? So because it's material and pervasive, I will issue an adverse opinion. So this is 3 points that you have to write. Now if it is for 4 marks, you will get one extra marks, or 1 marks is to explain the issue. So you have to say what is the issue. It's a discontinued operation not being disclosed, so it is resulting into incorrect disclosure, and that's why there is a materiality issue, there's a pervasiveness, and this is a adverse opinion. So 4 marks like this. In case this question is for 5 marks, then that one extra marks comes by stating the language of the audit report. So you can say the report issued would be the financial statements do not give a true and a fair view, and the opinion paragraph would be changed to adverse opinion, and the basis of opinion paragraph would be changed to basis of adverse opinion paragraph. So if you would include those 2 3 points, you will get that one extra marks. So this is how your marking scheme for reporting works. So please follow this marking scheme to give your answer. So you have to just talk material, pervasive, kind of audit report, explain the issue. That's it. That give you 4 solid marks. It says it continues to be disappointing to see that many candidates do not present a single audit opinion and often include an answer which covers multiple outcomes. So don't do that. Adverse or disclaimer. If the issue is pervasive, it would be an adverse opinion. If the issue is not pervasive, it would be a qualified opinion. Don't say that, guys. You have to say it's pervasive or no. Candidates are once again reminded that they should focus on what is relevant in the circumstances, and this can result in valuable minutes being wasted on points which do not score marks. Disappointing, a high number of candidates were not able to provide meaningful analysis on pervasiveness of the issue. So here, the issue is pervasive is what you had to write, and then it was an adverse opinion. If you said the issue is not pervasive, you should also be able to elaborate why it is not pervasive. Probably you said only one disclosure is incorrect, that's why it's not pervasive. But try and go back. If this disclosure is not correct, then is it affecting all my numbers? Definitely, because I'm adding all my revenue, expense, line by line in my PL. So you have to evaluate it. Answers were awarded professional skill marks where detailed analysis supported conclusion provided. In case you require assistance for your past papers, I'm also starting my mock series from tomorrow, wherein I'll be giving you two mocks I will be evaluating. One will be a mock I will give you, you need to write it. The other is your pre December mock, is what I will evaluate. Two mocks I'm going to evaluate. So that'll give you a good understanding of, am I following my marking scheme? Where am I going wrong? Is my answer right? Am I able to apply the concept? So it's very important to evaluate your papers. Simply writing is also not helping. So practice plus figure out what are your mistakes and correct those mistakes. Very important. So this is completing your examiner report analysis, and it is also all my tips are also being shared with all of you. So thank you all for joining in. I hope you've got to learn something good about your AAA paper, and you've understood the marking scheme, how to write and how much to write. And however, if you require any kind of help, you can always reach out to me. I'm available and very happy to help all of you, and wish you all the very best for your examination.